Just when it seemed like Kody Brown couldn't go any lower, he delivered a moment so sickening it shook the Sister Wives audience to its core. Viewers were left sick to their stomachs, stunned into silence, and angry. Kody, infamous for his insensitive comments and cringeworthy actions, went too far again, and the response online was immediate and explosive. So, what did he do this time? Oh, just wait. As season 19's tell-all commenced, Kody didn't spare any words. He turned to Robyn, called her delicious, and went on to slurp his tongue in a suggestive manner, driving audiences into collective gag reflex. This wasn't sexy. It was grotesque, performative, and utterly disturbing, particularly considering the context. They were supposed to be grieving the tragic death of Garrison Brown. Rather, Kody and Robyn made it a cringe-worthy show of lust that had fans cringing in dismay. And although Robyn was back at playing the role of the persecuted victim, her response to being called the sacred cow had eyes raised in surprise. Did she? Smile? Did she relish being treated as Kody's unassailable queen? The drama boiled over when Janelle exposed how Kody would lose it if anyone dared to question his consensual adoration of Robyn. For years, he put her and her kids above everyone else, including the emotional desires of his other wives and their 13 children, a betrayal viewers have not forgiven. But the kicker? Kody once boasted that Janelle only desired him for his body, referring to himself as a piece of meat she fancied due to his six-pack, and fans laughed and cringed in equal measure. For the truth is, what he attempts to convey doesn't match what the audience perceives. Nobody's a heartthrob. He is a man-child with archaic chauvinistic gestures. And Robyn? She may not watch old clips, claiming they're too painful, but her smug smirk while watching her co-wives suffering told another story. The sacred cow moment was revealing, not because of what was said, but because of how she reacted. So why does she smile when others cry? Why does Kody act like no one else matters? And how long can this twisted dynamic continue before it finally breaks completely? Buckle up, because this family's dysfunction is no longer just emotional. It's performative, poisonous, and falling apart in front of millions. Just when the fans felt they'd witnessed the worst of Kody and Robyn Brown, a new episode of unease unfolded. One so uncomfortable it danced along the border between stupidity and blasphemy, bringing fans to the edge of switching off their televisions forever. In what was supposed to be a somber, emotionally dignified reunion devoted to family introspection, especially given the recent tragic loss of Garrison Brown, Kody turned the moment into this gaudy theatrical exercise that stung anyone mourning or recalling what was once great about the show. Audiences sat in silence, aghast, as he turned to his sole remaining partner, Robyn, and slurped in front of everyone, calling her delicious and sloppily smacking his tongue in a scene that was as cringe-worthy as it was out of place. The host stumbled, not knowing how to regain composure from the awkwardness, and fans online went wild, appalled, revulsed, and saddened. This was not just an uncomfortable moment, it was a tone-deaf act of narcissism, performed with complete knowledge of the cameras and with complete disregard for the emotional gravity of the moment. But that wasn't all. Robyn's part in this burgeoning tempest was just as unnerving. She afterwards offered a weak explanation for not viewing old family videos, saying that they were too painful, when in fact, the fans believe she does so to guard a version of reality that she can live with, a version where she's innocent, untainted, and unaccountable. Her smug response to being likened to the sacred cow told us a lot. She smiled. She enjoyed it. It was as if the badge sealed the throne she's been accused of constructing for herself for years. Then came the clincher. Robyn suggested a secret between Meri and Kody, something explosive she would never disclose. out of respect, but she dropped the bombshell that Meri had requested to be left alone. The implication was obvious. Robyn has more, and she holds the key. This manipulative drip feed of evidence not only fueled anger, but raised suspicions that the very fabric of the family, already in disintegration, was being remade before the nation's eyes. And in the midst of all this tumult, suffering, and public bereavement, Robyn and Kody made what could have been a sanctified moment into a humiliating makeout session, reminiscent of their notorious horseback ride through another family tribute when Robyn had cooed over Kody like a high school girl, declaring him irresistible. People were ill then, and again now, physically ill, with what they perceived as emotional manipulation. These were not acts of love, they were empty acts for attention. Scenes dripping with vanity and not sincerity, and audiences could see right through them. What was initially a rich, multifaceted show about plural marriage and its attendant difficulties has devolved into a distorted display of one man's arrogance and one woman's triumphalism, both of whom seem to be completely unaware of the hurt that they cause in their trail. The once respected Robyn has, in the eyes of many, become complicit, no longer the calm voice of reason, but a key player in this slow-motion collapse. And though a few of the defenders implore the viewer to take into account that love may appear weird, the reality is starkly uncomplicated. This was the wrong time, the wrong mood, and the wrong individuals to create a spectacle when there is so much sorrow suspended in the air. The others, Christine, Janelle, Meri, gave years, gave love, gave everything, only to be blotted out in the spotlight of Kody and Robyn's freakish fantasy. And the actual question now is, how much longer will all this charade last before it all finally collapses? Longtime viewers of the program haven't forgotten the odd, unappealing comments the show's central patriarch has made concerning his previous wives, statements that over time have moved from uncomfortable to downright disturbing. At one such telling moment, he likened himself to a piece of meat, stating a previous lover merely desired him for his appearance, as though his abs were the draw. The moment, meant to be funny, instead made him come off as arrogant and tone-deaf, eliciting laughter from co-stars that sounded more like incredulity than humor. It wasn't cringe so much as it was a peek at his fantasy of grandeur, where love is reduced to surface-level lust and emotional intimacy is sacrificed for ego-massaging drama. Again and again, he leans into immature displays and objectifying language, turning what could have been moments of vulnerability into bizarre self-congratulations. Critics argue this isn't just ignorance, it's a desperate grasp for relevance, a last-ditch effort to maintain control over a narrative that has clearly evolved beyond his grasp. The truth, whereas his former wives have thrived, establishing lives, logos, and borders, he's been left with an empty kingdom constructed on bitterness and diminishing claps. Even his sole remaining ally, previously reserved and supportive, has begun allowing hints of displeasure creep through, longing out loud for the shared life that once gave sense to the anarchy. But her gentler musings are consistently overwritten by his booming pronouncements, theatrical flourishes, and frazzled efforts to remain in the spotlight. Audiences have started to wonder if her devotion stems from true love or some deeper terror of abandonment. And whereas the audience initially watched to see an unconventional family unit explore faith and relationships, they now sit riveted by the power of the women who left, by their strength, by their healing, by their determination to no longer be pushed aside. At the same time, the guy who used to anchor the program has turned into a caricature viewed not in admiration, but ghastly curiosity, with every outing analyzed for its next embarrassing quotable moment. The latest storm, though, was not generated by him alone. When the season's tell-all special aired, what transpired was not merely a collapse of relationships, but a public disintegration of believability. In a moment of subtextual tension, one that was intended to expose long-standing complaints and highlight unpleasant truths, a word emerged, sacred cow, uttered by an erstwhile wife to emphasize the egregious disproportion of love and regard. But instead of denying the epithet or answering with modesty, the surviving partner, the woman still holding on to the central relationship, smiled. It was a subliminal but crushing moment, a smile captured on television that hit home like an admission, not of guilt, but of pleasure. To viewers, that momentary smile verified every nagging doubt that had hung in the air that preferential treatment had existed, that unfairness had simmered, and that the scales had been tipped all along. Her refusal to view old clips, sanctioned as self-protection, only made the fire burn hotter, so that many took to thinking that it wasn't pain she was protecting herself from, but rather truth. For to see the clips would be to see the damage, the betrayal, the destruction of faith. To look would be to confess. And she did not. In the meantime, her former sister wives flooded with anguish, mentioned muted moments and overlooked needs, and the couple in the middle flaunted their relationship like a trophy obtained at the cost of everyone else. What was once a tale of plural wholeness has unraveled into a TV spectacle of two individuals holding on to something, anything, because they're so desperate not to fade away, while the others have moved into something truer, something liberated. And that smile, that single self-satisfied blink, will resonate louder than any of their prepared statements, because it wasn't just a response, it was an epiphany. It was all the confirmation viewers needed, the subtle smirk, the unwavering posture, the chilling pride in her silence. She didn't even flinch, one stunned forum user posted, echoing a wave of disbelief cascading across fan boards. You'd think someone who claims to be misunderstood would cringe at that. Rather, she stood proud. Even casual fans got it. A man watching for the first time turned to his wife and said, "Why is she smiling like this?" And in that moment, the response rang excruciatingly true. It wasn't a smile, it was a coronation. Her smile, her stillness, her refusal to deflect or deny the title of sacred cow shouted louder than any monologue. It was how she appeared to absorb it like long-awaited acknowledgement, a perverse confirmation of all her co-wives' worst fears, that she never sought equality, only the throne. And now that they were all deceased, she occupied it, unapologetic, unchallenged. The word, intended as sarcasm, became a curious badge of honor, one she asserted without rebuke, without question, as if she'd been primed for that crown all these years. Established fans were stunned by the moment, not because it was unexpected, but because it explained decades of gaslighting and favoritism. The man who once promised to treat all his wives the same had, with each flashback and each defensive deflection, been proved otherwise when his other mistresses howled that they were being neglected. Their anguish had been downplayed, diverted, or attributed to their alleged lack of comprehension. But not with her, never with her. He'd protect her, shield her, guard her feelings with the religiosity of devotion. "Gaslighted for years," one viewer replied. "Now it's just out in the open. He idolizes her, and she's aware of it." And just when tension should have dissipated, she fanned the flames with her subtle comment about the first wife, insinuating, sotto voce, that the first matriarch had begged to be left. It was a heartbreaking contradiction to the sisterhood and unity she had previously espoused, a betrayal cloaked by a veil of so-called respect. She always claims to want peace, one supporter posted bitterly. But then she throws that kind of shade on national TV. Others were even crueler. She didn't want peace, she wanted power. And now that she has it, she's retooling the entire narrative. This wasn't a reunion special, it was a reckoning. A last burning stripping away of the scaffolding viewers had adhered to for more than a decade. A painful but inescapable shattering of a family that once boasted balance and faith. For the fans, the outcome felt both crushing and liberating. The other wife might have positioned herself as devastated by the breakdown of the family, but her attitude spoke otherwise. Not a mood of sorrow, but of victory. And yet, what was the triumph? Ex-wives testified between sobs of abandonment, years of emotional rejection, and the pain of being told, overtly or otherwise, that they weren't enough. Quitting had cost them dearly, but it had also brought them back to themselves. The man they left behind was now forced to endure the destruction of his own making. What was sold as a spiritual union of peers had devolved into a platform for favoritism, imbalances in power, and spectacle. By the time the season finale went to black, audiences didn't require dramatic reveal or last speeches. The truth had already been spoken, in a look, in a pause, in one perfectly timed smirk. That look destroyed any remaining illusions. Fairness never existed. The hierarchy was always present, hidden behind bumper stickers. Now, the masks are off. The sacred cow, previously protected at all costs, stands naked, untouched, unexamined, and nakedly exposed. Maybe ultimately, that's precisely what she desired. Thank you for watching.